Coming up on Network Africa. The United Nations Secretary General Office says attacks on DR Congo bases and peacekeepers may amount to war crimes. 20 people killed, including regional official in Somalia's suicide explosion, plus French President Emmanuel Macron in Benin Republic for the second leg of his Africa tour. Hello and welcome to the program today. I'm Layo Olande. The United Nations Secretary General's office has said any attacks on peacekeepers may constitute a war crime, and that's coming after 2 UN bases were assaulted in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. A spokesperson said Antonio Guterres had called on the Congolese authorities to investigate the incidents. The peacekeeping mission MONUSCO in the country blames the violence and looting of UN property on criminals pretending to be protesters. It said they had seized weapons from Congolese police and opened fire. Well, there's been widespread anger in the country at MONUSCO's failure to halt decades of violence by armed groups operating in the mineral-rich East. UN Deputy Spokesperson Farhan Haq says 3 United Nations peacekeepers and at least 12 civilians were killed during the second day of the violent anti-UN protests in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Well, the protests were spurred by complaints that the UN mission had failed to protect civilians against militia violence that has raged on for years.
Violence against our peacekeeping mission is continuing to escalate. At the MONUSCO Butembo base today, violent attackers snatched weapons from Congolese police and fired upon our uniformed personnel. Sadly, 1 military peacekeeper and 2 UN police personnel were killed, and another was injured. We add our voice to the acting head of MONUSCO, Kasim Dieng, to condemn the killing of our colleagues and to express our deepest sympathy to their families and colleagues. Mr. Dieng has described the violence against the UN as absolutely unacceptable and counterproductive, given that the mission is in the country to work alongside local authorities, to protect civilians, deter armed groups, and build the capacity of state institutions and services. He called on Congolese authorities, civil society, and community groups to denounce the violence. It is not in chaos and confusion or division that we will make progress towards stability and peace, he said.
Well, 20 people have died following a suicide explosion in the Somali coastal town of Marka, that's in the regional capital of Lower Shabelle. Well, the blast happened outside the district headquarters. Well, the Al-Shabaab militant group has claimed responsibility for the attack that has also killed the district commissioner Abdullahi Wafo and some of his security guards. Marka town is situated just 90 kilometers south of the capital, Mogadishu. President Emmanuel Macron is in Benin Republic for his second leg of his 3-nation Africa tour. He has met with his counterpart, President Patrice Talon, after Tuesday's visit to Cameroon, where he also met with President Paul Biya. During Macron's visit on Wednesday, they will be discussing security concerns in the region and also culture. There have been increased attacks from rebel groups for months in northern Benin, and the authorities have said they have recorded nearly 20 attacks by rebel groups since the end of 2021. French officials say France aims to respond positively to requests from Benin and other countries for air support and intelligence to combat Islamist militants. Well, while President Macron was in Cameroon on Tuesday, he criticized Russia's influence in Africa, deeming it a preoccupation for the continent's people. Speaking in Yaoundé alongside President Paul Biya, President Macron said Russia's presence in Africa is based on misinformation, militia, and complicity with weakened powers, adding that France, as a friend of Africa, will do everything so that the format of Russian influence does not spread too much. Well, African governments recently have largely avoided taking sides and refused to join Western condemnation and sanctions over Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But anti-French sentiment has been seen to rise in France's former West African colonies, where security concerns and political instability following a string of coups are stoking frustration and swinging public opinion in favor of Russia. All two of Kenya's four presidential candidates made good their threats to skip a televised presidential debate on Tuesday night that was organized by media owners ahead of next month's elections. Former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, one of the two frontrunners, and George Wajakoya had separately expressed reservations about the formality of the debate. Deputy President William Ruto, the other frontrunner, and David Mware turned up for the debate, but each stood alone answering questions after the withdrawal of their respective opponents. Well, the debate was meant to be two-tiered, meaning Mr. Odinga and Mr. Ruto were to face each other after Mr. Wajakoya and Mr. Wahiga, who have each scored less than 5% in opinion polls, had debated.
What we cannot entertain as a country is a position that we cannot pay. We are in a position that we can't service our debt. We cannot, we need to go out there and renegotiate our debt. I think that would send the wrong signal. Those contracts and agreements, in accordance with the Constitution, are public documents. And the public have a right to know and to have access to that information. The fact that that information is not being made public is against the Constitution. We have 5 million young people who are not working. We have 15 million Kenyans who today are blacklisted in CRB. We have 10 million citizens who have no access to credit in the micro and small enterprise sector. And I believe I am the candidate with a plan to be able to get Kenya to the next level.
Abby Agina, Kenyan journalist, joins us now from Nairobi for more on this. Hello, Abby. Thank you for speaking to us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Deputy President William Ruto was the only one on stage answering questions in that debate. That must have been awkward since his opponent didn't show up. How did it go?
Well, thanks once again. Indeed, it was a very interesting debate in terms of, for the first time, Raila Odinga, one of the presidential candidates, did not attend the debate, and this was a big blow to his camp. Many are arguing that the debate was a very important platform for him to articulate his issues to the nation. On the flip side, Mr. William Ruto was taking the stage by himself, and he did respond to quite a number of issues as regards to the plan that he has once elected into office. He also did outline that he continues to remain committed to the people of Kenya, and all this has been received in very interesting perspectives from the public. Majority of the public were following the debate, and from the interactions and the reactions really from various quarters, they feel that the other candidate ought to have been there to square it off with the current deputy president, Mr. William Ruto. So it's still the talk in town here in Nairobi, Kenya. And of course, a lot of feedback coming in. As we speak right now, I'm in the coastal city of Mombasa, where a number of Kenyans are utterly disappointed by the fact that two of the candidates never turned up. Because remember, the four presidential candidates in Kenya, we had only two of them showing up. One was the first session where we had Mwaure, who is one of the presidential candidates under the Agano party. And then, of course, we had Professor Wajakoya, who also made a no-show. On the flip side, on the main debate, Mr. Raila Odinga also did not turn up. And of course, he had his specific issues where he did articulate them, saying that he cannot debate with Mr. Ruto on several issues that he put out with his campaign team.
Well, help us understand, Abby, how much of an impact, really do these debates have on the electorate?
Well, this debate has an influence when it comes to swaying public opinion, because the debates are literally an avenue where the candidates can now, in a very organized fashion, interact with the public and, of course, showcase their brilliance to Kenyans when it comes to responding to key issues that were being raised by the moderators. So the debate can literally sway the voting patterns in the country, because it is an event that is very closely followed from the grassroots level to the national level. And it will have an impact in terms of changing the minds of some of the voters who are undecided on the various candidates. But it is also being questioned that the debates are usually for the middle class in the society. Of course, all this cannot be justified for the simple reason that majority of Kenyans do really follow on mainstream television. So the debate is a platform no one can assume that cannot have an impact in changing the voting patterns in the country. But it's all but a question of wait and see.
All right, even as we wait and see, August 9th is the set date. How are citizens, getting ready to choose their next president?
Well, the country is fired up. We've seen a number of pronouncements from the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, that is our electoral body. So far, they have been receiving ballot papers. For instance, today they received ballot papers for the presidential ticket, and these were received at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, where a number of IBC officials were there. But the big question right now is, will IBC be able to hold a credible election? So far, voter registration was conducted in the country, and we did see a lot of Kenyans coming out to get registered. And this election will be what analysts call a tight one, because it's a two-horse race between Mr. Odinga and Mr. Ruto. So far, most of the people are gearing up to the elections. A good number of them have also been just getting ready to travel, because some of them have their voting outside the capital. So plans are underway for people to travel to cast their votes, and it will be an interesting election to watch in Kenya's history, where a sitting president is endorsing an opposition member, where Kenyans have not been treated to such political developments in the country's history. So it's going to be a very, very tight election, if you ask me. And all eyes are on Kenya, including the election observers are already in the country. They are monitoring different developments across the nation. Security remains very well beefed up. So I can confirm to you that Kenyans are looking forward to this election, and it will be an election that will have significance for the East African region at large.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Abi Agena, Kenyan journalist, joining us there from Mombasa.
Thanks for having me.
Still ahead on Network Africa. Miners in the northeast of Angola discover the largest diamond in 300 years. We'll give you details in a moment. Please join us again. Thanks for staying with us. Tunisia has voted to hand sweeping new powers to the country's president in a move that critics say risks the return of authoritarian rule to the country. Fewer than a third of Tunisians voted in the referendum, with 94.6% of those balloted supporting plans to hand President Kais Saied broad new powers. But opposition groups who boycotted the vote said the results were not credible and inflated. However, Mr. Saied has claimed the changes will break Tunisia's political paralysis. The 64-year-old has already been ruling by decree since this time last year, when he dramatically moved to suspend parliament and also to dismiss the government. Well, Tunisia's new constitution will give the head of state full executive control, supreme command of the army, and the ability to appoint a government without parliamentary approval. Civil servants in Zimbabwe have begun a two-day strike to demand pay increases. They also want their salaries to be paid in the US dollars as the local currency rapidly devalues. The government is doubling salaries this month, but unions say the increases have been eroded by the high inflation in the country that stands at about 190%. Schools, health facilities, and also government services could face major disruptions as unions say they expect all their workers to stay home. But the strike does not seem to have been well observed, according to reports, with teachers being at work. The average worker, including doctors and nurses, earn about $200 a month. The Zimbabwean dollar has lost over 50% of its value since January, partly due to the war in Ukraine. Well, the unions say they are planning a longer strike in September if their demands are not met. Or here in Nigeria, the Cross River State government is promising farmers of more support in modern techniques in agriculture practices across its 18 local government areas. Deputy Governor Professor Ivara Esu says the training and distribution of farm inputs is part of its agro-industrialization drive.
Gathered here are farmers cut across Sogoja Yala local government area of Cross River State to participate in the training and distribution of farm input. About 200 farmers are expected to benefit from the first phase of the training program. The training and distribution is organized by the state government to assist farmers in boosting their yield, as well as expanding the state's economy. According to Professor Ivara,
by producing these ones,
held the factories
who are going to train many of you
to
today,
function effectively and give ways for foreign investors to patronize the factories.
This program is really for the training of farmers in modern agriculture, and also to symbolically distribute these inputs, mainly fertilizers and herbicides that are here today.
He enjoins farmers to make the most of the training to support the government's interest in agriculture, which is geared towards employment generation, food production and security, poverty alleviation, and the creation of raw materials for industries. The Special Advisor to the Governor on Agriculture and Value Chain Development, Emmanuel Ano, disclosed that the target for the input is mostly the youth, following the government's passion for youth inclusiveness in the agricultural value chain. He explained that it's better to invest in the youth, for they are the future of the nation.
You will understand that as soon as the young people learn how to make money from farming, they will not leave it alone. They're going to pursue that agenda. It will keep them away from social vices. It will keep them away from rural-urban migration. It will keep them away from loitering around the streets. It will make them to become self-sufficient, to pursue their dreams and to make money from farming.
The Commissioner for Local Government discloses that they've put in place a team to monitor the activities of the beneficiaries across the benefiting local government areas.
You know, there are local governments that this probably may not be their farming season. As we progress, you know, we are going to be applying whatever the farmers need in all localities. We are going to apply at the season as required. We are going to meet them at the point of their needs. This is just the pilot scheme. We are going to spread to other local governments as we progress.
With a target of 18,000 farmers in Cross River State within the 2022 farming year, to strengthen the competence of farmers in adopting modern technology of farming, to increase supplies of rice paddy to Ogoja vitaminized rice mills, soybeans and maize to Cross River Feed Mill, groundnut to Cross River State Vegetable Oil Processing Factory, Bekwara cocoa to the Cross River Cocoa Processing Factory, as well as others, it's hoped that the beneficiaries make good use of the opportunity and improve their productivity.
The South African government has expressed concerns that Israel's continued occupation of significant portions of the West Bank and the development of new settlements there are glaring examples of violations of international law as the long-running Israel-Palestine conflict goes on. Well, South Africa's Minister of International Relations, Naledi Pandor, says the Palestinian narrative evokes experiences of South Africa's own history of racial segregation and oppression. She was speaking at the second meeting of the Palestinian heads of mission in Africa held in the capital, Pretoria. Ms. Pandor said Pretoria believes Israel should be classified as an apartheid state and that the United Nations General Assembly should establish a committee to verify whether it satisfies the requirements. Weeks before the new Zulu king is to be crowned, the royal family is still bringing disputes before the South African courts. However, the most recent court case has been struck off. On Tuesday afternoon, a judge described an urgent application to stop the coronation of King MISUZULU'S as a non-urgent matter. It had been filed by the king's uncle and 12 others who do not want King MISUZULU to replace his late father, King Goodwill Zwelithini, who died in April last year. For more than a year, the family has brought a host of succession and inheritance disputes before the courts, with several members of the royal family forming factions about who the successor should be. Well, now let's head back to Kenya to meet Sylvia Gatoni, who is the first female professional gamer to fight to define herself on her own terms. The 24-year-old law graduate is also one of the first eSport athletes to make the Forbes list of global trailblazers. Take a look.
As the first Kenyan to be signed by top esports companies, Sylvia Gatoni is used to vanquishing opponents with a combination of frenzied kicks and punches in the male-dominated video game tournament circuit. But the 24-year-old law graduate is as committed to flooring adversaries with words in a quest to be defined on her own terms.
I insist on being recognized as an esports athlete, not a female esports athlete, is for the aforementioned reason. I bring my mental, strengths to the table, not my physical strengths, and that's why it shouldn't really be segregated according to gender.
She found early success fighting as the character Ling Jiayul in the hand-to-hand combat game Tekken, winning her first major competition in 2019 and continuing to rise through the ranks on the circuit to earn money and fame. For Mary Wanjiku, a supervisor at the Trick Gaming Cafe in Nairobi, Gatoni has helped push open the door to other young women in an overwhelmingly male arena.
In this gaming arena, mostly are men. So first, he has influenced a lot of female. I can see 2 or 3 ladies popping in, playing MK, playing FIFA. I mostly have they have known Quinaro through maybe Trick Gaming or tournaments where he has been playing tournaments. So Quinaro is most of the influential gamer, I can say.
Now Queen Arrow, as she's known in the gaming world, is one of the first esports athletes to make the Forbes list of global trailblazers, which has helped assuage her parents' concerns in a country where gaming retains social stigma.
The reaction from my parents initially was they were reluctant for me to get into esports because they didn't fully understand what esports was all about. And I honestly don't fully fault them for, for their reservations, because, these aren't the opportunities that are available to them growing up. But I think they've been more accommodative and receptive, and if they don't, I don't think they'll ever fully understand what esports is all about, but they've been more accommodating, especially with my recent accolades and achievements.
Freshly graduated, Katoni said a law degree is more than sideline. She wants to use it to change legislation to improve the reputation of the industry.
And finally, on the program, it's a fascinating site in the northeast of Angola as miners have discovered a rare pure pink diamond they believe to be the largest rough diamond of its kind to be on Earth in 300 years. The pure pink diamond has been named Lulu Rose by the Australian site operator with weight measurement of 170 carat. It says the diamond will be sold at international tender by the Angolan State Diamond Marketing Company. All the find in the Lulu Avuluvial mine has been welcomed by the Angolan government. And that's it on the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olaride.